Hey guys, today we're going to be checking out the Meze Empyrean 2. Of course, this has been out for, I think, close to, a couple of years now, and the headphone landscape does obviously look quite different now than it did back then. And I guess the question would be, is this still competitive or relevant today in 2025? So of course, we'll go over the contents of the package. We'll go over the accessories, briefly talk about the design, build, and comfort, and then we'll get into sound. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So the Meze Empyrean 2 has been out for quite a while now. I think it was released late 2023, if I remember correctly. Of course, this is the follow-up to the original Empyrean, and that was priced at $2,999, and they've just stuck with that price with the Empyrean 2. So this is also $2,999. It uses a special planar magnetic driver that was actually developed by a company called Renaro in collaboration with Meze. Comes with a very nice, hard protective case, and I'll have some B-roll of that running in the background. It was too big for my to put on the table here, but it's a really nice, hard protective case, and it also has some very precise foam cutouts to accommodate the exact shape of the headphones, and there's also a space for the extra ear pads. Cable is also an upgrade over the original. The original cable was okay, I guess, but this is without question an upgrade. And it looks fantastic, but also it's just a well-made cable. It's very soft, it's supple, the hardware is robust, and it just looks and feels really, really premium. And it just looks and feels like a cable that is worthy of the aesthetics and the build quality of the Empyrean 2. And that's saying a lot, because the design and the build of the Empyrean 2 is really nothing short of impressive, to say the least. And there are a lot of beautiful sets out there at this price point, but if I'm being honest, even 2 years later, this is still probably one of the more premium looking and feeling sets that I've come across. It's absolutely exceptional. So it looks amazing. It feels premium to the touch, but it's also very, very comfortable with the, it has this reverse curve leather headband, and they've just done an exceptional job with the whole suspension system. It's also very easy to adjust, and it's fairly lightweight. The clamp force is just about right for me, not too tight, but certainly tight enough to make me feel secure when I'm wearing it. Bottom line though, this is probably among some of the most comfortable headphones I've ever tried. They've also included 2 pad options. You've got the duos and then the angled Alcantaras. They're both very comfortable. For me, however, they do sound very different, and I do prefer one over the other. I'll talk more about that in the sound segment. But going back to the driver, again, this is a custom planar driver made in collaboration with Renaro. It has a 32 ohm impedance. However, it only has a sensitivity of 90 dB. So while it doesn't necessarily really require much in terms of power to drive it, you may find yourself having to turn the volume up just a little bit more depending on your source's power output. And I will talk more about that in the sound segment as well. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and move on to sound. Okay, so let's quickly talk about drivability. So again, this does have a 32 ohm impedance, which is good, but the sensitivity is only 90 dB. So while it's not necessarily going to require much in terms of power to drive it, I did notice that I had to turn the volume up a little more than usual. For example, with the Moondrop Dawn Pro 2, I was able to reach pretty loud volume levels at around 70 out of 100 volume steps. And then with the Questyle Sigma, I was at, I think, about 60 out of 100 volume steps, and that thing is a beast, by the way. The Theo QX13 was around 40 out of 60 volume steps, and I did get basically similar results with everything else as far as my dongles. So the M18i, the M15i. Now, as far as other devices that I tested this with and paired these with, I used a very wide range of both portable and desktop devices, including the Ibasso DX340, the DX270 MK2, the Hibi R6 Pro Max, Onyx XM10, and then some of my desktop devices I have are the Fio K19, Luxon X9, Xduo TA32, the Fio K9 Pro ESS, and a few others. Speaking of which, I don't know if you've noticed here, but I have this little headphone amp right here by Heritage Audio. I think they're out of Spain. And this is the OHM or OHM, and I don't know if I'm going to give this its own video yet, but what's interesting about this device is that it has this little dial right here that you use to select the impedance of whatever headphones you're using. But apparently, if I understand correctly, it's actually just a gain selector. So that in and of itself isn't necessarily anything really that exciting. But this company, what is interesting to me is that this company is actually a pro audio company. So they're coming at this from more of a studio perspective. And I think that's pretty apparent based on the design. It has this kind of a vintage studio look to it, which I actually really dig. It puts out, I think, about 2 watts. And I have to say, I was really impressed with how good this sounded with the Empyrean 2. It is a little noisy with sensitive IEMs, but with headphones, I was really surprised at not only how easily it drove basically everything I have quite well, but just with its general sound quality. It's not necessarily what I would consider to be uncolored. It certainly does have some warmth to its presentation, and the treble is a little on the soft side. Honestly, though, for its $500 asking price, there are certainly better options out there. The Fio K15 comes to mind, but it's still an enjoyable little amplifier. Now, it didn't necessarily highlight the technical capabilities of the Empyrean 2, but it was decently technical, and for me, I think its appeal was more on the musical side, and I just really dig the vintage kind of studio vibe it has. Anyway, back to the Empyrean 2. Now again, you've got 2 different types of pads that came with the Empyrean 2, and there are some differences in the way they sound. The pads that come pre-installed are these here. These are the Duo pads. And to me, what I'm hearing, I guess, is kind of a bright, warm signature. So you have a little bit of low, mid, and mid bass energy, but then you also have some upper mid and treble energy as well. And then with the Alcantara pads, you do retain all of that energy in the top half, so it does remain pretty open, pretty airy and spacious. Plus, again, you also have that upper mid-range forwardness, but what happens is with these, you lose much of that warmth and that mid-bass in the lower half. So you keep that somewhat bright presentation up top, but then you lose some low mid and mid bass energy. Personally, for me, I prefer the presentation with the Duo pads. Of course, this is going to come down to your tuning preference. The technical performance seems to be about the same, so you're not going to be sacrificing any detail. You might be getting a little more detail with the Alcantara pads, but really, though, honestly, they seem about the same to me. And let's just say the technical performance of both is excellent. This is the kind of detail, control, and imaging that I would expect at this price point. And with either pad, it certainly does not disappoint. Now, just to clarify, when I use the term bright, this is not an overly sharp presentation to me. You have that extra treble presence, but its presentation is not harsh. It's not piercing at all. It's still tame and very, very refined. Not that it's soft sounding necessarily, although when I'm listening to it, it does almost sound soft. And I guess the best way for me to describe it is it's just simply refined. In any case, most of these impressions are going to be with the Duo pad. So you have a warm, bright presentation, and what I can really appreciate about this added energy in the lower mids and mid bass is that you get all of the benefits that come with, again, that extra energy, but without any of the negative trade-offs. You also get a nice, tight, punchy, and impactful kick presentation, but it is very tasteful at the same time. You get just the right amount of added richness and weight with vocals, but it's not overly thick and it's certainly not muddy. On the contrary, this is delivering very impressive amounts of low, mid, and mid bass texture and clarity. Now, I should also point out that there is some extra bass energy all the way up to about, I think around 300 hertz. So that might land outside some of your preferences. So if you are looking for an ultra clean mid-range, some might find this to be maybe a little too much. It has a similar lushness actually to the Poet. That said, it is still what I would consider to be well-defined and textured. And that definition and that texture carries through into the mid-range as well. Actually, it carries through the entire presentation, but instrument clarity and resolvability is simply excellent, as is instrument and vocal naturalness. And then as you move to the upper mids, this is what I would consider to be maybe somewhat vocal forward, although there is a little bit of a dip around 1.5K that, again, despite that, it doesn't seem to have any significant impact on or negative impact on naturalness, and there's still enough energy beyond that to allow vocals to cut through very, very nicely. So you have really good vocal naturalness and clarity, and then that energy stays up once you get past 6K and into the upper treble, but you don't have to worry about it getting too edgy. They were able to keep some of that edge off, and while I'm sure there will be those of you who might find it to be a little too much, for me it's perfectly fine. Every track that I used for testing cymbals, treble naturalness, treble details, they all sounded excellent to my ears. Technicalities, as I said before, are excellent. I'm getting lots of details and micro details. Imaging is very good. Instruments have a very dense and a very focused presentation. Left-right staging is quite wide, and while I would say to me there is certainly good forward depth and layering, it's not super deep. I do feel like everything is maybe just a little bit closer, I guess. In any case, it's still what I would consider to be very immersive, and it does keep me engaged with the music. Now, as far as comparisons, we'll go ahead and start with the original Empyrean. I do not own the original Empyrean, but I do have access to one, and I was able to do some side-by-side comparisons, and I have listened to it before, so I am familiar with its sound, and I do like it. However, I would consider this to be an improvement over the original, and I think for me the original is just a little too colored as far as how far it goes into the warm, bright territory. This does not go that far, so to me this is just a little more, I guess, palatable. So if I had to choose one of the other, I would choose this over the original. I also have the HD 800S, of course. It's not quite in the same price category as the Empyrean 2, but it is something I use all the time, and it does actually have kind of a similar dip in the mid-range, I think around 1.5K. And as far as just pure listening enjoyment, I did find myself making a stronger connection with the Empyrean 2. And I have always felt like the bass performance and tuning of the HD 800S wasn't exactly to my preference, but I also felt that there were so many other things about it that I really liked, and that it did really well. And I guess I didn't really feel like there was a huge negative trade-off for me. Its bass is a little light for me, and I do feel like the Empyrean 2 just overall, it comes a little closer to my bass preference. And I also think I prefer the overall vocal presentation of the Empyrean 2 as well. It's just a little more forward, not too forward, but I think the engagement factor is just kicked up a notch for me with the Empyrean 2. So I still love my HD 800S, but the Empyrean 2 really is something quite special. So in conclusion, this is without question my favorite Meze headphone, and I would even say this competes with some of the best that I've heard around this price point, even 2 years later. And I'm sure there's sets out there that I have not heard, newer sets I have not heard, but based on what I have heard, this definitely kind of leaves me with that feeling that there is no doubt in my mind that on a technical level, this is certainly competitive for this price point. But beyond that, while it does have some coloration, it's very tastefully done, and it's still distinctively Meze, if that makes any sense. So it's not so colored or different that I find myself not able to connect with it, and it doesn't really deviate too far outside of my preference. So it's still kind of normal sounding, I guess you could say, but at the same time, it clearly distinguishes itself from the crowd so that it stands out. And I feel like it's different enough, even from the original Empyrean, that I feel like I'm experiencing something new and unique, but something that is still refined and something that still measures up to a standard that I would expect from a higher end headphone in every way, from design and build, the accessories, the visual presentation, the tuning, the technical performance, everything. So even 2 years later, I feel like the Empyrean 2, again, it's still relevant and certainly competitive in my opinion. In any case, I think that does it for this video. If you are new to the Gazzadio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. Please like this video, please share this video, please comment on this video. I hope you have an awesome day.